Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez had always been different from the other Marines in his unit. While his fellow soldiers carried the standard-issue black and dark green rifles, Marcus showed up to the firing range with something that made everyone do a double-take. His rifle was bright orange, painted in a color that seemed more suitable for construction equipment than military weaponry. The first time he walked into the armory with his customized weapon, the entire barracks fell silent. Then came the laughter. It started as quiet chuckles from a few Marines, but quickly grew into full-blown roars of amusement that echoed through the concrete halls of Camp Pendleton. "Hey, Rodriguez, you planning to hunt traffic cones with that thing?" shouted Corporal Jenkins from across the room, causing another wave of laughter to ripple through the gathered soldiers. "Maybe he thinks the enemy will be too busy laughing to shoot back," added Private Wilson, wiping tears from his eyes. Marcus simply smiled and continued cleaning his weapon. He had heard every joke imaginable about his unconventional choice. The bright orange paint job had become his trademark, though most of his fellow Marines saw it as nothing more than a foolish quirk that would get him killed in combat. The truth was, Marcus had his reasons for the unusual color scheme, but he kept them to himself. He had spent months researching and testing different approaches to long-range shooting, and his orange rifle was the result of careful planning and scientific thinking rather than some random whim. Captain Williams, the unit commander, had initially been concerned about the non-regulation appearance of the weapon. Military protocols were strict about equipment modifications, and a bright orange rifle certainly stood out against the approved color schemes. However, Marcus had followed all proper channels, submitting the necessary paperwork and obtaining approval from higher command for his modification. "Rodriguez, I don't care if your rifle is painted like a rainbow, as long as you can hit your targets," Captain Williams had said during their first meeting about the weapon. "But I have to warn you. If this becomes a distraction or affects unit cohesion, we're going to have a serious problem." Marcus assured his commander that the modification would not interfere with his duties. He had been one of the top marksmen in his unit for 3 years running, consistently scoring expert ratings on the rifle range and excelling in advanced marksmanship training. His fellow Marines might joke about his equipment, but they could not argue with his results. The orange rifle was actually a heavily modified M40, a 6 sniper rifle, equipped with advanced optics and precision-tuned components that Marcus had carefully selected and installed himself. The bright color served a specific purpose in his shooting methodology, though he rarely explained the technical details to anyone who asked. During training exercises, the jokes continued. Other snipers would make comments about how easy it would be to spot Marcus in the field with his safety cone rifle. They suggested that enemy forces would see him coming from miles away, making stealth operations impossible. "That thing glows like a beacon," Sergeant Martinez observed during one training session. "You might as well paint a target on your back and call it a day." But Marcus remained focused on his training regimen. He spent countless hours at the range, working on breathing techniques, wind reading, and distance calculations. His shooting logs showed remarkable consistency, with groups that were tighter than most Marines could achieve even on their best days. The breakthrough came during a challenging training exercise at the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in California. The scenario involved long-range target identification and engagement under difficult weather conditions. High winds, changing light conditions, and extreme distances would test every sniper's skills to their limits. As the Marines set up their positions, the familiar comments about Marcus's orange rifle began again. The other snipers were confident that their traditional camouflaged weapons and conventional techniques would prove superior to whatever experimental approach Marcus was using. The first target appeared at 800 meters, a standard distance for Marine snipers. All participants successfully engaged the target, though Marcus's shots were noticeably more precise than the others. His rounds consistently hit within inches of the center mark, while other shooters showed more variation in their groupings. As the exercise progressed, targets appeared at increasing distances. At 1,200 meters, some Marines began to struggle with accuracy. The wind was picking up, and the afternoon light was creating challenging visibility conditions that made target identification difficult. Marcus continued to perform exceptionally well. His shots remained precise and consistent, even as other skilled marksmen began to show the effects of the demanding conditions. The range instructor, Master Sergeant Thompson, began to take notice of the unusual performance. "Rodriguez is shooting lights out today," Thompson commented to Captain Williams, who was observing the exercise. "Whatever he's doing with that orange rifle seems to be working." The captain nodded, though he remained skeptical about the unconventional approach. Military training emphasized proven methods and standardized equipment for good reasons. Innovations were typically tested extensively before being approved for field use, and individual modifications were generally discouraged. At 1,800 meters, only half of the participating snipers were still able to achieve consistent hits on target. The distance was pushing the limits of both equipment and human skill, requiring perfect coordination of multiple factors, including wind compensation, elevation adjustment, and precise trigger control. Marcus continued to excel, his orange rifle performing flawlessly despite the extreme range. His shooting position was rock steady, and his calculations appeared to be perfectly calibrated for the challenging conditions. Other Marines began to watch his technique more closely, trying to understand what made his approach so effective. The final standard target of the exercise appeared at 2,400 meters, an extremely challenging distance that would test every aspect of long-range marksmanship. At this range, even small errors in calculation or technique would result in complete misses, and successful hits required near-perfect execution. As Marcus prepared for the shot, the joking and laughter from earlier in the day had completely stopped. His fellow Marines watched in respectful silence as he went through his pre-shot routine, making careful adjustments to his scope and calculating the complex ballistics required for such an extreme shot. The sound of his rifle echoed across the mountain valley, followed by tense seconds of waiting as the spotters confirmed the impact. When the call came back that he had achieved a direct hit, the other Marines began to realize that there might be more to the orange rifle than they had initially thought. 3 months after the mountain training exercise, Marcus Rodriguez found himself deployed to Afghanistan as part of a special operations unit tasked with providing overwatch and reconnaissance in the rugged terrain near the Pakistan border. The mission was classified, but the basic objective was clear: establish observation posts in elevated positions and provide long-range support for ground operations in the valley below. The deployment had been sudden, with little time for the usual pre-mission preparations. Marcus packed his gear quickly, including his controversial orange rifle, which had now gained a somewhat legendary status among the Marines who had witnessed his performance during training. Captain Williams had initially expressed concerns about bringing such a distinctive weapon into an active combat zone. The bright color could potentially compromise concealment and put the entire team at risk. However, Marcus's consistently exceptional performance had earned him a reputation that was hard to ignore. "Rodriguez, I'm trusting you with this," the captain had said before departure. "That rifle of yours better perform as well in the field as it does on the range, because our lives might depend on it." The team arrived at Forward Operating Base Chapman in the early hours of a cold morning in October. The base was situated in a valley surrounded by towering mountains, with enemy positions known to exist in the high ground overlooking the American positions. Intelligence reports indicated that Taliban snipers had been increasingly active in the area, engaging coalition forces from extreme ranges that pushed the limits of counter-sniper operations. Marcus was assigned to a 4-man sniper team led by Staff Sergeant David Kim, an experienced operator who had completed 2 previous deployments in Afghanistan. The team also included Corporal James Mitchell as the spotter and Private First Class Alex Thompson as the radio operator and security specialist. Kim had heard about Marcus's unusual rifle and his impressive training results, but he remained skeptical about how the weapon would perform in actual combat conditions. Real-world operations involved variables that could not be replicated in training, including stress, irregular targets, and the psychological pressure of knowing that lives hung in the balance. "I don't care what color your rifle is," Kim told Marcus during their first briefing. "What matters is whether you can make the shots when it counts. This isn't a training exercise anymore." The team's first mission involved establishing an observation post on a ridge approximately 3,000 meters from a suspected enemy staging area. Intelligence indicated that Taliban forces were using the location to coordinate attacks against supply convoys traveling through the valley below. Setting up the position required a grueling overnight hike through treacherous mountain terrain, Carrying full equipment loads, including the heavy sniper rifles and ammunition, Marcus's orange weapon stood out dramatically against the drab landscape, creating concerns about visibility that the team would need to address through careful positioning and camouflage. Upon reaching the designated position, the team began the careful process of establishing their hide site. The location offered excellent visibility across the valley, but it also presented challenges in terms of concealment and protection from the elements. The October weather was unpredictable, with sudden temperature changes and wind patterns that could significantly affect long-range shooting. As they settled into position, Corporal Mitchell began setting up the spotting equipment, while Marcus prepared his rifle for the extended observation period. The orange color that had attracted so much attention during training now seemed like a potential liability in the harsh realities of the combat environment. "We're going to need to do something about that color," Kim observed, studying the weapon through his binoculars. "It stands out like a signal flare against this terrain." Marcus had anticipated this concern and had prepared accordingly. He produced a specially designed camouflage cover that could be quickly installed over the rifle while preserving access to all critical components. The cover was designed to break up the distinctive outline and coloring without interfering with the weapon's performance. "The color actually serves a purpose," Marcus explained to his team members. "It helps me track the barrel position and make micro-adjustments that improve accuracy at extreme ranges. But you're right, we need to conceal it for tactical operations." The first day of observation passed quietly, with the team identifying several potential targets but receiving no authorization to engage. The rules of engagement were strict, requiring positive identification and approval from higher command before any shots could be fired. On the second day, the situation changed dramatically. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target had arrived in the valley, and coalition forces were planning a coordinated operation to capture or eliminate the individual. Marcus's team was tasked with providing overwatch and eliminating any threats that might emerge from the elevated positions surrounding the target area. As dawn broke over the mountains, the team observed increased activity in the suspected enemy positions. Through their powerful optics, they could see individuals moving between buildings and defensive positions, some carrying weapons that suggested they were preparing for combat operations. "Contact, 2,800 meters, northeast of the primary target building," Mitchell called out, identifying a potential sniper position in the rocky outcroppings above the valley floor. "Individual, with long rifle, appears to be setting up a shooting position." Kim studied the target through his own optics, confirming the threat assessment. The distance was within the effective range of Marcus's rifle, but it would require precise calculation and execution under combat conditions. Unlike training exercises, there would be no second chances if the first shot missed. "Rodriguez, can you make that shot?" Kim asked, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command decision. Marcus had already begun his pre-shot calculations, factoring in the distance, wind conditions, elevation differences, and other variables that would affect bullet trajectory. The orange rifle was already positioned and ready, with the camouflage cover removed to allow full access to the weapon systems. "Positive," Marcus responded. "I have a clear shot and good wind conditions, ready to engage on your command." As the team prepared for the engagement, radio chatter indicated that the ground operation was beginning in the valley below. Coalition forces were moving into position, and the window for neutralizing potential threats was rapidly closing. Any enemy snipers in elevated positions could cause significant casualties among the exposed friendly forces. The tension was palpable as Marcus settled into his final shooting position. This would be his first combat engagement with the orange rifle that had generated so much controversy and attention. All of the training, preparation, and theoretical discussions would now be tested under the ultimate conditions of actual warfare. Through his scope, Marcus could see the enemy sniper clearly. The individual was approximately 2,800 meters away, positioned behind rocky cover that provided excellent concealment but limited mobility. The shot would need to be perfect, as there would likely be no opportunity for a follow-up if the first round missed. "Send it," Kim commanded, authorizing the engagement. The sound of Marcus's rifle cracked across the mountainside, the report echoing through the valleys below. Through the spotting scope, Mitchell tracked the bullet's path, watching for the telltale impact that would confirm a successful hit. "Hit. Target down," Mitchell confirmed. his voice carrying a mixture of relief and professional satisfaction. The successful engagement marked the beginning of what would become an extraordinary day of long-range shooting. As the ground operation continued, additional threats emerged from various positions around the valley, each requiring precise calculation and flawless execution from Marcus and his orange rifle. The success of the morning engagement had proven the effectiveness of Marcus's unconventional approach, but the team's most challenging test was yet to come. As afternoon approached, intelligence reports indicated that enemy reinforcements were moving into the area, including what appeared to be a highly skilled sniper team positioned at an extreme range on the opposite side of the valley. Staff Sergeant Kim studied the intelligence updates with growing concern. The reported enemy position was located approximately 4,100 meters away, a distance that pushed far beyond the normal effective range of standard sniper rifles. At such extreme distances, even the most skilled marksman would struggle to achieve consistent accuracy, and environmental factors became exponentially more difficult to calculate. "Rodriguez, we've got a problem," Kim announced, pointing to the distant ridgeline where the enemy sniper was believed to be positioned. "Intelligence says there's a shooter up there who's been taking shots at our people down in the valley. The distance is over 4,000 meters. Marcus raised his binoculars and studied the reported location carefully. The position was barely visible, even through powerful optics, appearing as little more than a dark spot among the rocky outcroppings. Making an accurate shot at such a distance would require perfect conditions and flawless execution. "That's definitely outside normal engagement range," Marcus acknowledged. "But with the right calculations, and if the conditions hold steady, it might be possible." Corporal Mitchell was skeptical about the feasibility of such an extreme shot, even with the most advanced equipment and perfect conditions. Hitting a human-sized target at 4,100 meters was more a matter of luck than skill. The bullet would be in flight for several seconds, during which time wind conditions could change, and the target could easily move out of the impact zone. "Marcus, that's nearly 2.5 miles, Mitchell pointed out. "The bullet drop alone would be enormous, not to mention wind drift and all the other variables. Are you sure this is even worth attempting?" But Marcus was already setting up for the shot, his mind racing through the complex ballistics calculations required for such an extreme engagement. He had trained extensively for long-range shooting, and his orange rifle had been specifically modified and tuned for maximum accuracy at extended distances. The first step was to gather detailed environmental data. Marcus used his portable weather station to measure wind speed and direction at multiple altitudes, temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure. All of these factors would significantly affect bullet trajectory over such a long distance. Next, he calculated the precise distance using both laser range-finding equipment and triangulation techniques to ensure accuracy. Even a small error in distance measurement would result in a significant miss at 4,100 meters. The calculation showed the target was actually 4,087 meters away, a distance that would require approximately 4.3 seconds of bullet flight time. As Marcus worked through his calculations, radio reports from the valley below painted an increasingly urgent picture. The enemy sniper had already engaged several coalition positions, forcing friendly forces to take cover and disrupting the ongoing operation. Every minute that passed allowed the enemy shooter to continue inflicting casualties. "We need to neutralize that threat," came the order from higher command. "Use whatever means necessary." Marcus completed his ballistic calculations and began making the precise adjustments to his rifle scope. The orange weapon that had once been the subject of ridicule was now the focus of intense attention as the only tool available to address the distant threat. The scope adjustments required for the extreme shot were so significant that Marcus had to use nearly the full range of his elevation and windage controls. The bullet would follow a high arc trajectory, climbing several hundred feet above the line of sight before descending toward the target. "This is going to take everything the rifle has," Marcus told his team members. "The bullet path will look more like artillery than sniper fire." As he settled into his final shooting position, Marcus drew upon years of training and experience to control his breathing and heart rate. The physical demands of extreme long-range shooting were as challenging as the technical aspects, requiring perfect body control and mental focus. Through his scope, the target was barely visible, appearing as little more than a slight disturbance in the rocky landscape. Marcus had to rely heavily on his spotter's assistance to maintain target identification and track any movement that might affect the shot timing. Wind is steady at 8 miles per hour from the left, Mitchell reported. No significant gusts detected. Target appears stationary. Marcus made his final scope adjustments and began his breathing cycle, preparing for the moment of trigger release. The shot would need to be timed perfectly, taking advantage of the brief pause between heartbeats when his body was most stable. The seconds stretched endlessly as Marcus prepared to fire. This single shot would either validate years of training and preparation or demonstrate the limits of what was possible with small arms fire. Every member of the team understood the historical significance of what they were attempting. When Marcus finally squeezed the trigger, the orange rifle bucked against his shoulder with familiar recoil. The muzzle blast echoed across the mountainside, and then came the agonizing wait as the bullet traveled its long path toward the distant target. For more than 4 seconds, the team watched through their optics, tracking the theoretical path of the invisible projectile as it arced across the valley. At such extreme range, it was impossible to visually follow the bullet, so they could only wait and hope that the complex calculations had been accurate. "Impact," Mitchell suddenly called out, his voice filled with disbelief. "I see dust and debris from the target area. Stand by for confirmation." Radio chatter from the valley below soon provided the confirmation they were waiting for. The enemy sniper position had been neutralized, and the threat to coalition forces had been eliminated. The impossible shot had found its mark across more than 4 kilometers of mountain air. News of the extraordinary achievement spread rapidly through the military command structure. A confirmed sniper kill at 4,087 meters was far beyond anything recorded in previous conflicts, representing a new benchmark for long-range marksmanship under combat conditions. The orange rifle that had once been a source of jokes and skepticism was now recognized as a precisely engineered tool that had enabled one of the longest confirmed sniper shots in military history. Marcus's unconventional approach and scientific methodology had proven their worth in the most demanding test possible. As word of the achievement reached higher command levels, military officials began taking serious interest in Marcus's techniques and equipment modifications. The bright orange color that had seemed so impractical was actually part of a sophisticated system for improving accuracy through enhanced visual reference points and barrel tracking. The successful mission transformed not only Marcus's reputation but also military thinking about equipment customization and individual innovation in combat operations. Sometimes the most unconventional approaches could yield extraordinary results when backed by solid science and relentless training. Years later, the orange rifle would be displayed in the Marine Corps Museum, accompanied by detailed documentation of the historic 4,087-meter shot that had silenced the skeptics and established new standards for military marksmanship. What had begun as an object of ridicule had become a symbol of precision, innovation, and the power of thinking beyond conventional limitations.